Probably at least 20 or 30.
Perfect
Did
title.
you conduct autopsies of victims of motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
Now, prior to working at the coroner's office, you
Tracy, right now, this is the defense's witness, and it's the defense that's questioning her. This is Mr. Alessi.
worked at the jail emergency department at General Hospital that you described, right?
Yes.
And in that position, did you provide treatments to persons that suffered dog-inflicted injuries?
Yes.
And just approximately how many? And then we'll move on to the next topic.
Approximately, personally myself, about 40, but I was involved I worked as part of a team, and so I think we saw probably about 60 of these severe dog bites.
We're going to shift again to keep it moving. Have you authored or edited any publications on dog-inflicted injuries on humans?
Yes.
And what publications, please?
So I was a co-author on 2 peer-review articles in major emergency medicine journals. One of them was describing the law enforcement dog bites, injury patterns, and another one was more focused on the management of the law enforcement dog bites.
And did you, those are ones you co-authored, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever edit the work of others, articles or books, as part of a peer review process?
Yes.
Describe that, please.
Yes. I was asked to be a co-editor of a 2-volume
Me too.
series on forensic emergency medicine in a peer review article series. And one of the chapters in one of those issues was on was on bite wounds. It was written by Dr. Gerald Vale, V-A-L-E, and who is a renowned board-certified forensic odontologist.
In terms
That was a
of
mouthful.
moving now from peer-reviewed articles you co-authored, peer-reviewed books and articles you edited, have you attended any seminars or talks or lectures on wound identification and or bite wounds?
Facts, Jennifer.
Yes.
Just briefly describe a couple to give the jury a flavor of what those were.
Well, there have been many lectures on wounds of all sorts.
It's very clear that she loves everything that she has done.
And in the emergency medicine program, of course, there were lectures on wounds from various types of animals and how to treat them. In the forensic arena and at some of the professional organizations, there were lectures or talks on wounds, and also there was a yearly talk on
Marie Russell.
bite wounds given by Dr. Vale at the
Right.
coroner's office.
To state perhaps the obvious, have you had a lifelong interest in dogs and dog-inflicted wounds?
Yes.
And is that a professional and a personal interest?
It's professional.
Right, mostly professional, as you've described it. Let's now keep moving and go to another topic. Have you testified as an expert in court before?
Yes.
Is that in state and federal court?
Yes.
What topics have you testified to in state and federal court?
Causes of death, wounds, child abuse, domestic violence, mostly causes of
Wait, are you being serious? She was on MASH, or are you just joking?
death.
Have you testified
Thank you, Tam.
as an expert regarding emergency medicine?
Yes.
Have you testified as an expert regarding forensic pathology?
Yes.
What do you mean by that, Frank?
Have you been found to be qualified as an expert in each of those categories in the courts in the United States?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever not been qualified to testify in any court in the United States?
No.
Have you ever testified as an expert regarding identifying dog-inflicted wounds on humans?
No.
And
Okay.
why not?
Really quickly, guys, I got to answer a couple of your questions here. Yes, the jury is there. They're off to the side. We don't get to see them.
Because it's, I mean,
Right.
prior to this case, because it's not a topic that comes up very often.
So although it comes up often in your practice, in terms of whether it's an issue in court, is it, my understanding from your answer, it just doesn't come up that frequently?
Correct.
Are you aware of any
Frank, honey, when the state rests, then it's the defense's turn to present their witnesses.
other physician practitioner that would be testifying in court a lot on this topic, given what you just said about the infrequency of it coming up?
No, I'm not.
Now let's go on to
I don't know, honey. I don't know.
what were and the last question on this line, give a general idea of the types of wounds that were at issue and whether there were any pattern wound issues in the.
We do things a little bit differently here. We go on a delay so that way when there's breaks, we could fast forward through them. So if the jury was at home, we don't know it yet.
Those cases that you've testified in court about.
Well, many of them were stab wounds. Some were blunt force wounds from, from a variety of mechanisms, including, assaults
You're welcome.
or motor vehicle accidents again, a lot of wounds from accidents, and then, of course, gunshot wounds.
Were those, the topics both living persons as well as deceased?
Yes.
Let's now move to, you've mentioned wound pattern, right? And are you familiar with the topic in the area of wound pattern recognition?
Yes.
Can you please describe for the jury what
Here we
you
go.
mean by wound pattern recognition in your practice and from your experience? What is it generally, and we'll get to some more specifics as we go through.
Well, generally, pattern recognition is very important in medicine. It's important in a
Pictures don't blink.
lot of different fields of medicine, including radiology. They look for patterns on x-rays. Pathologists under a microscope looks for certain patterns to identify cancerous cells, for instance. So pattern recognition is very important. And then as a subset, wound pattern recognition is of course very important to physicians that deal with patients that, come in from the street, so to speak, from, who may have been.
And correction, we're not like we delay. It's the same day. We just start later.
Assaulted, may have been child abuse victims, may have been domestic violence, elder abuse, those kinds of victims, because sometimes it's important to, or you learn that what actually happened is not what the patient or the relative or the presenter said happened. And so you have to discern or figure out what happened in a case. And so you have to be able to identify certain patterns and regions of the body, for instance, where wounds are, in order to make that happen. And so it's very important. It's emphasized in emergency medicine.
When you were in residency, were you taught wound pattern recognition methodologies?
Yes.
And is wound pattern recognition an area that you continue to learn and then gain experience from your over 30 years as an emergency medicine physician?
Yes, it was emphasized in both emergency medicine and forensic pathology, in both fields. Very important.
Is wound pattern recognition a generally accepted methodology that is applied in the practice of medicine?
Yes.
And you've given a few examples of that pattern recognition methodology. Is that pattern recognition methodology generally accepted and discussed in the peer-reviewed medical literature?
It is
I
in
agree,
certain
Ella.
articles, yes.
And we'll be getting to some of those. In terms of,
I hope she does a lot more than the city. More than the city.
wound pattern recognition,
Since
just
10:30.
roughly how frequently in your experience as an emergency medicine physician did you have to exercise your skills in wound pattern recognition?
Sorry to pause again, but I just now realized we got over 100K likes. Thank you, truly, you guys. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
I would say probably weekly, because I always questioned, what the patient was telling me, and did it fit? Did the story make sense? So I did it quite often.
And was that
Slander.
particularly important in child abuse cases where you may not be getting the story and you'd have to look at wounds and make your own determination?
Yes.
Now let's go and slightly move on to a very similar topic as to whether you ever had to determine the source of the wound without any input from a patient.
Oh, yes, many times. Many patients arrive to the emergency department unconscious.
And that's one example of others. And with regard to language barriers, did you ever encounter that as an obstacle to you understanding what may have happened and you therefore had to exercise your pattern recognition skills?
Yes.
So now in terms of dog bites specifically, how often, if at all, did you have to look at a patient without input from anyone to determine whether it was from a dog?
Occasionally.
And can you recall any specific instance, or is it just you're recalling that you generally had to do it, but you can't recall a specific instance?
The second of that I generally had to do it. Sometimes, there was a language barrier and people couldn't describe what it was that bit them. And it was important to know because treatment for different types of bite wounds is very, very different.
And to be fair to the situation, you can't give any one specific, you remember this person was this age, etc., but you know that you did that on more than one. I'll withdraw that and go to the next area. Let's now talk about wound pattern recognition in the area of forensic pathology. What role does pattern recognition play in forensic injury analysis? And could you please just let the jury know what you mean by forensic injury analysis as regards pattern recognition?
Okay, so forensic analysis or forensic injury analysis is the analysis of injuries from a medical legal perspective. In some areas of medicine, the doctors are taught to just treat the injuries, and no figuring out about how it happened or what caused the injuries so much as they treat. But in my case, both the emergency department and the forensic pathology training, I was interested in how the injury happened. That was a very important factor to me.
Why is pattern recognition important in the field of forensic pathology?
Well, you could look at a wound all by itself, an abrasion, for instance. Abrasion is a scratch. And in and of itself, it might not tell you how the wound occurred all by itself. But
they're not like us.
But if there are a series of scratches or a series of lacerations or cuts, they can tell you more about how it happened.
And have you applied wound pattern recognition skills in your practice as a forensic pathologist?
many times.
Could you just give the jury a flavor of why, just a few examples? Maybe two.
Okay. Self-defense wounds, for instance. An issue comes up often in court. If certain wounds were inflicted on purpose versus were they inflicted self-defense, and things like appearance and location can help you determine that. What was the question again?
It's just a few examples of applying pattern recognition skills in forensic pathology.
Oh, yes.
Thank
People.
you, doctor.
More?
No, yeah.
I'm as delayed as we need to be. We fast forward through the sidebars, pause when we need to, rewind when we need to. This is the third witness, though.
Oh, yeah. Motor vehicle accident. People who are struck by cars. There are certain patterns that one expects to see when a individual is struck by a car. And we're taught, to look for certain patterns, and that can help you determine if they were struck by a car.
And in terms of motor vehicle accidents and patterns, can you give an example of some of the patterns you would expect to see in someone, and that you have seen in someone that is struck by a motor vehicle?
Oftentimes lower extremity
About 2.5 hours later today.
fractures, for instance. Lower extremity bruises and fractures are commonplace for someone who is struck by a car.
And in your practice as an emergency medicine physician, a rough approximation of how many lower extremity injuries you have examined and evaluated with regard to motor vehicle accidents, including in the Los Angeles area?
Oh, I think probably hundreds.
Alrighty, so now let's continue with the topic that you were talking about. You called it
Don't forget filling in the pool, too.
defense injuries and wounds. I want to cover that topic. Are you familiar with the term posterior surface?
Yes, in terms of anatomy.
In terms of human anatomy, and with Your Honor's permission, could Dr. Russell point to her arm to show what she's referring to with regard to posterior surface for a defense injury?
Sure, go right ahead.
So let me explain just in general.
Sure.
Anterior is the front of the body. And
Excuse me, Dr. Russell, I'm sorry, if you want to stand up so the
Yeah,
jury, with Your Honor's
yeah.
permission.
Yes,
Yeah, this was a generational family home, so getting rid of something like that is huge.
are you
Okay.
comfortable standing
Yes.
up and doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
So many years ago, anatomists decided on a nomenclature for describing parts of the body. And so the way the body, the descriptions go is that you take a person in what they call the standard anatomic position, which is upright with their arms, their palms facing forward. Palms facing forward. So that is the standard anatomic position. So anything in the front is anterior, anything in the back is posterior.
Could you point to the arm when you talk about anterior and posterior, please?
Yes, so with regard to the arm, if the palm is facing forward, that's the anterior. So the posterior part of the arm would be the back part that I'm touching right now. This back part of the arm and the back part of the forearm would be right here. So that's the posterior of the arm.
And what relation does the posterior of the arm have in determining whether or not a wound is a defensive wound?
Well, oftentimes, when someone is being attacked, they will put their arm up to defend or protect their face, their neck, their chest, their vital organs, their vital parts of their body. So they put their arms up. And in doing so, the posterior part of the arm becomes presented to whoever is attacking them or whatever is attacking them. So this is the part of the arm that oftentimes gets injured when someone is defending themselves.
Thank you, doctor. how often have you observed and concluded regarding defensive wounds to the forearm?
Many times. I don't know. I don't have a number.
Is it-
20, 30, I don't know, in terms of decedents. And then in terms of live people, many, many more.
And if we just start with the posterior part of the forearm that you've described and you encounter wounds there, are those wounds indicative or highly indicative of anything?
Well, they're indicative of defensive wounds being caused during a defensive action.
In your experience as a resident, a fellow, emergency room physician, and a forensic pathologist, and your time at Cochrane, have you experienced and taught the topic of defensive wounds?
Yes.
It varies from each state. Some have different ways that they do it. That's just the way it is there.
Now let's move on to another topic.
I know,
Do
right?
you have knowledge of the dental features of dogs?
Yes.
Where did you gain your knowledge about the dental features of dogs?
Generally from reading articles.
And in terms of examining patients with dog-inflicted wounds, did that inform you anything about dog dentition or not?
Not specifically.
In terms of dog dentition, Your Honor, may I approach?
Okay.
Thank you.
What for? What are we waiting for?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have this depiction marked as an exhibit for identification?
So, for ID?
For ID only, yes.
Guys, I saw we got over 120,000 likes. Thank you. Let's take a mandatory break so you guys can rest your fingers. You don't have to tap. Let's take a little break. I appreciate you guys.
O for identification.
No, that's Lori Daybell. This is
Your Honor, may I hand it to you?
Karen Reed.
I'm handing you Dr. Russell what has been marked for identification as OOO as in orange.
I know.
Dr. Russell, do you recognize that depiction?
Yes.
What is it?
This is a diagram of canine dental anatomy.
And could you please, just for the jury, briefly describe dog dentition and what we mean by the term dentition? I think most know, but just for the record.
So I believe dentition just means the teeth and the shape of the teeth and of the mouth of the animal or person. And what this diagram shows is that in general, dogs tend to have a triangular mouth, meaning, it comes, to a narrowing towards the front of the mouth. It shows how many teeth a normal dog will have, and what they look like. There are different kinds of teeth, just like humans have different kinds of teeth.
And Your Honor, to assist the jury in the understanding of what Dr. Wilson is speaking about, with Your Honor's permission, could we publish this as a chalk for the jury?
Is there any objection?
I hope so, Lucid.
None, thank you.
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. And will enlarge Mr. Woke Dr. Russell, where would you like to start with regard to this, just to give the jury a brief discussion of dog dentition? Which part of this should we zoom in on?
I think the lower half around the triangular upper and lower jaws, right there.
Right there? Very
Yeah.
good. And Mr. Wilk, if you could just, to start with, pull it down just so we can see the headings, and more importantly, the jury can see the headings of those two diagrams that Dr. Russell has pointed out. Yes, and just enlarge that. Can you read what's on the left and what's on the right? It's slightly blurry.
It's very blurry. I can't even read it.
It's slightly blurry.
Mandible, lower jaw, maxilla, upper jaw.
Yes, I can read it.
Right. Alrighty. So if we could then just reduce it back down so it's a little bit so that it's not distorted. And then Dr. Russell, if you could just talk about it. And before we do that, I think it would be helpful, Dr. Russell, we go to the depiction up above just to get the overall picture up above there of the dog. All right. Is that that's an overall picture, correct? Do you want to point out anything generally on that picture?
I don't have a pointer, but generally it's a side view, and it shows the and it's a skeletal view, so there's no skin, and it shows that there are some prominent teeth. They're called the canine teeth, and then there are some smaller teeth in front of that.
Excuse me if I couldn't interrupt. Pardon my interruption. Yes. I'm just going to try to locate in the courtroom a pointer, Your Honor. If
there's nothing on that.
It depends who you believe, but the evidence is leaning towards them saying that John was bitten.
Here, Dr. Russell, hopefully that will work for you. Thank you. Excuse me.
Okay, so this is a side view, and it shows many teeth, and and this is a skeletal view, obviously. And it shows these prominent teeth, which are called the canine teeth. Humans also have canine teeth, and ours are not quite as prominent. And then there are some teeth in front of that, which are called incisors. So that's the overview.
Right. And just to put this in context, we are looking at this and talking about dogs. Have you had,
guys, if you've watched ahead, please, no spoilers.
The opportunity to review any photos of the right arm of the decedent in this case?
Yes.
And is one of the topics you're going to address whether those wounds are from a dog?
Yes.
And so this background in terms of dog dentition part of what you're going to cover for the jury later on?
Yes, and I want to make one more comment, if I may.
Please.
Just when a dog bites, they usually don't bite with all of the teeth. They usually don't get all the teeth impacted on the individual. So that's important to know. Oftentimes it's the anterior or the front teeth.
Why, doctor, is it the case that a dog doesn't always have a complete bite, get all of the teeth? Why is that the case?
Well, there's oftentimes movement. Oftentimes the dogs aren't really trained on biting techniques. And so, there's oftentimes the person who's being bitten is pulling away and trying to avoid the bite. So oftentimes there's only impact with a few of the teeth in the front.
Great. Please continue, doctor.
I was saying in general, Mamma Mia. Just in general.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
As people come in, I let people know. That way, in case they miss the no spoiler, please. Just in general. Thank you for subscribing, Rachel. I appreciate it.
So overview, these large canine teeth, these are the anterior teeth. And as I said,
is everything okay in chat? If you guys need me to step in, just let me know. Here, we respect people. We don't attack people. So if that's what's happening, that's when we'll have a problem.
as I said, it's very rare for all the teeth to be involved in the bite. It's usually just the front teeth and canine teeth.
Are there certain teeth that are on this depiction that cause certain types of injuries, abrasions, tears, punctures? Is there any relation to the teeth in any of those categories, or can it be just general?
Well, oftentimes, because the canine teeth are so long compared to the others, they are the ones that seem to cause the puncture wounds. And those are the ones that appeared to get the grip on the person's skin.
Is there a medical term for a puncture wound from a canine? Or is it just it's a punctate wound from canines?
I'm not sure there's a medical term.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. And that's about it on this side view.
And is there any other view on this exhibit that you would like to discuss with the jury?
Well, I was going to show that it's triangular again. Here the upper and lower jaws. Yeah, they tend to be somewhat triangular.
Is that also sometimes the shape referred to as an hourglass, or is it triangular, or you prefer triangular?
I've heard it referred to as hourglass. I don't see an hourglass, but yeah, maybe in some dog breeds, because all the different dog breeds have different shapes of their mouths. But this is just a generalization.
Okay.
No, when I showed the picture of Guilty, that was Lori Daybell's picture with Guilty on it, because we were talking about the Lori Daybell update. Not about Karen, guys. Not about Karen. We were talking about Lori Daybell, who was in the picture.
Please continue.
I don't know that there's anything else.
All right. And so you think...
actually, yeah. So here you can see, go back, please. So here you can see, again, the canines, and it's oftentimes this is the upper jaw, the maxilla jaw. It's oftentimes these teeth that do the impacting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say it's often these teeth that what?
That do the
I'll try to stay on topic, guys. Sorry for the confusion.
impact. The upper jaw is oftentimes the part that actually makes contact with the skin. That's all.
Thank you. We can take that down, Mr. Wolf. Thank you, Your Honor. Now let's go to dog-inflicted injuries on humans generally. What type of injuries to humans can be caused by dog-inflicted bites?
Well, there are lots of different types of injuries. So they could be extremely minor, from a minor scratch to puncture wounds by individual teeth, to actual puncture and punctures by several teeth. There could be several abrasions because there are multiple teeth involved, and if they don't puncture, they at least scratch. They can scratch the skin. That's what I call abrasion, is a scratch. So they scratch the skin, but in parallel, because the teeth are lined up. So they oftentimes have parallel lines. And then, of course, there are bruises that could occur because of the crushing injury, and there can be what we call avulsions, which are where an actual flap of the skin is removed. And I can go further, but there's a wide extent of injuries.
So there's a wide extent, a wide range, and can you just give one or two factors that are going to determine whether you're on the more minor side of the range to the more major part as regard to the type of bite that the dog is able to get?
Well, I think that when there is penetration of the skin and pulling away of some of the tissue, I would consider that a more significant bite because of what's needed for treatment.
Just bear a moment, please. Thank you. So in terms of the nails and claws of a dog, what type of injury, if any, can those cause?
So the nails they're also somewhat pointy or triangular in configuration or shape, and so they can cause scratches, and actually they can cause even deeper wounds if the nail catches the victim's skin a certain way. But most of the time, just scratches.
From your experience, what type of medical experience, peer-reviewed article experience, your whole professional experience with dog-inflicted wounds on humans, do you have experience with just a part of the range or the whole range of injuries that a dog can inflict?
Well, I think I have a very wide range of experiences because those very serious ones we talked about in the very beginning, where there were crushing and ripping injuries, or those were the trained canine dog bites. Most emergency physicians don't even get to see those. They're so so uncommon. But because I was assigned to jail ward, that's how I got to see them. But in the majority, in the main ER, most ERs in our main ER, we saw the more minor type of injuries.
So in terms of,
The frozen thing came from earlier testimony. That's why people are talking about frozen. Guys, can you do me a favor? When you're stating things and they could be taken as fact, please put IMO, which means in my opinion, next to it. I really don't want people to say Michelle's passing misinformation, so I would really appreciate it. IMO. Thank you, guys.
if someone is bitten by a dog, where are they? Again, I think most people understand this, but just to be clear for the record, when someone gets a dog-inflicted wound, where do they usually go?
Well,
Sustained. Ask it.
I do, Rachel.
Doctor, are you aware of the medical facility from your experience where people go who have dog-inflicted wounds?
well, if they feel like they need medical care, they will either go to a family doctor, or most likely the emergency department, because the emergency department is where the resources are, the people that with the experience. They go to the emergency department in general.
From your experience for people and your literature review and authoring of documents, do people with dog-inflicted wounds go to a veterinarian for treatment?
A jury doesn't get repeated. It's a new jury.
I'll let you answer it.
Not from my experience.
All right, now let's
Let me rewind this.
move
Sorry,
to another
guys.
category. Where do they usually go?
Well,
Sustained. Ask it.
First objection.
Doctor, are you aware of the medical facility from your experience where people go who have dog-inflicted wounds?
well, if they feel like they need medical care, they will either go to a family doctor, or most likely the emergency department, because the emergency department is where the resources are, the people that with the experience. They go to the emergency department in general.
From your experience for people and your literature review and authoring of documents, do people with dog-inflicted wounds go to a veterinarian for treatment?
I'll let you answer it.
It was probably the ghost.
Not from my experience.
All right, now let's move to another category.
Right.
And to keep this moving along, how did you initially become involved in this case?
Well, very interesting.
Tammy.
I live in Los Angeles, and I saw something in the Boston Globe about this case, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. And then eventually I saw or heard something, because I'm not from this part of the Massachusetts. I'm from a different part of Massachusetts. So anyways, eventually I heard or saw something about there being an issue with some possible dog-inflicted injuries versus maybe car-inflicted injuries. So that got my attention. I thought, that's interesting. And so that's how I initially became aware of the case.
Let's talk about the Boston Globe. How is a person from Los Angeles reading the Boston Globe? And
Well,
why?
That's
Is
a
it
very,
like a one-time thing, or why is it you're reading the Boston Globe?
I had a subscription. I would, not always read it. I lived in Massachusetts. I went to school in Massachusetts. I worked in Massachusetts as a police officer. So I have some interest in Massachusetts, but none of that was in this geographic area. It was all north of Boston. So that was the area I mostly paid attention to.
Did you reach out to anyone after reading that article? And what do you recall from the article in the Boston Globe, if anything?
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Did you reach out to anyone after having read something in the Boston Globe?
Yes, I thought the question was interesting.
Objection.
I'll let that stand, but just answer Mr. Alessi's
Yes,
question, please.
yes, I did.
Go ahead. Answer.
Okay, yes, I reached out to one of the DAs in Los Angeles County.
And at that point, what, if anything, did you know about this case?
I didn't know much. I just knew what I mentioned, and I knew that the decedent was a police officer, had been a police officer, and that interested me also because I was a police officer.
Please keep your voice up, Dr. Russell.
I said that interested me also because I had been a police officer.
Go ahead.
So that's about all I knew, really.
Right. So, did you know anything about what the prosecution was claiming or the defense was claiming at all? Did you know anything?
Sustain.
What did you know, if anything, about the case?
I'm going to see its eyebrow really quickly on this.
You just can't help yourself, can you, Hank?
Have
Because Hank objected again. Quietly, but he still objected.
moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
They will show the dog bite. I cannot show the dog bite, so I'll be pulling the camera down when they show it.
Dr. Have, in terms of Mr. Wolk, if we could please, and Your Honor, may we publish what is already in evidence, which is Exhibit 167?
Okay.
Dr. Russell, do you recognize Exhibit 167?
Yes.
And how do you recognize that? Well, first let's start. What is it, and then how do you recognize it?
It is a picture of the decedent's right arm and forearm.
Now, without stating what it is, have you been able to form an opinion as to the source and nature of the wounds that are depicted in that exhibit?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the next area, can you describe for the jury what method you used in forming your opinion without yet stating what your opinion is?
Well, I used pattern recognition and differential diagnosis.
So let's start with wound pattern recognition. Is that the wound pattern recognition you've been discussing up to this point in your testimony?
Yes.
And did I hear you use the phrase differential diagnosis?
Yes.
Please tell the jury what you mean by the term differential diagnosis as a emergency medicine physician and forensic pathologist?
So when a when a physician sees a patient and, or, an Imogen's case, and is attempting to make a diagnosis, it's very important that not only do they consider what they believe is the obvious, but also in their mind go through other possible diagnoses and determine if they can rule them out, so to speak. If they can rule them in, rule them out, so that they are not just focused on one thing, but they've actually given consideration to other conditions that may be causing whatever it is that they see.
So, Mr. Wolk, if you could take that, we're going to come back to this back and forth, but I'd like to have it taken down until we do have the need to, and if we could have the lights go back on, Your Honor, thank you. So, does applying a differential diagnosis, well, let me start out. Do you understand what confirmation bias is?
I believe so.
Yes, and does differential diagnosis assist or not assist in avoiding confirmation bias?
I believe it assists in avoiding confirmation bias.
So, in terms of differential diagnosis, did you apply that concept in the beginning of your analysis of this case?
Yes.
How did you apply differential diagnosis to, among other things, avoid confirmation bias in this case?
This is Marie Russell. She's the dog expert, and we love her.
Well,
Jinx.
in my mind, I went through other possible things or causes of wounds on an arm, and what they would look like, and the configuration, the patterns, etc. And then I figured out why these other potential causes of wounds in the arm did not fit this case.
So is a phraseology a synonym for differential diagnosis, what doctors call ruling out something? Is
If you missed any of this, I'll be putting the live on my YouTube when it's over.
that another way to say it as well?
Yes.
So we're going to come back to the differential diagnosis. I just wanted to have that question first. Now let's switch to the materials that you considered in forming your opinion about the nature
And don't forget, she was even an educator.
and source of the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe. Describe what you looked at in terms of coming to your opinion, conducting a differential diagnosis, and avoiding confirmation bias. What did you look at?
That too.
Well, I looked at pictures similar to this. So there were pictures taken at the hospital. There were pictures taken at the medical examiner's office. I looked at the medical records. I looked at the autopsy report. And I looked at other reports from the Massachusetts State Police. And then, those are some of the things I looked at.
Did you look at any photographs, including of clothing?
Of what?
Clothing?
Oh, yeah, clothing.
We don't know. They don't show us Karen very often.
Clothing, of course.
What clothing did you look at?
So there was a shirt, like a hoodie shirt, that I looked at that had many defects in it.
And when you say defects, what do you mean by defects? Is there a more layperson's term?
Holes?
Thank you. Did you look at any history of
This
any
one.
dogs with regard to any municipalities and dog incidents?
I'm going to sustain that, Mr. Leslie.
Did you look at any municipal records with regard to your review in this case?
So that's sustained.
With regard to other documents, if any, could you describe any other documents that you looked at?
Well, I also,
When I see you at sidebar.
Since this sidebar, I'll give you really quick. We don't know that, well, they don't. Okay. It's being presented that he was hit by a vehicle by Karen. However, many people have looked at that saying that they believe that's a dog attack. So it all depends on what you believe. However, the medical examiner did not rule this a homicide. Keep that in mind. And if you're wanting to know where said dog is now, we don't know because she changed her name to Cora. And she's been rehomed at least 2 other times. So, yes, Karen goes to sidebars. Yeah, many people have also thought it was Colin as well. Keep in mind when it shows the dog butt, I have to pull the camera down, guys.
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Legends of Korra.
Thanks for your patience, Dr. Russell.
She did
We had broke off where you had described the materials that you had reviewed. Based on your, and Mr. Wolk, if we could please put the exhibit that we just had, and with Your Honor's permission, republish it. Thank you. Based on your review of all the materials that you had described and your experience that you had described, without stating it, were you able to come to any conclusions or opinions about the source and nature of the injuries that you see depicted on that exhibit?
yes,
And what is your opinion and conclusion concerning those injuries?
those wounds were inflicted as the result of a dog attack.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
They were inflicted as the result of a dog attack.
And how did you form that opinion? Just describe your thought process to the jury.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Well, there are multiple groupings of wounds.
Do you have the pointer?
I
there?
do.
And if you could use the screen that Her Honor has requested.
If you guys want to see the picture, you can
So there
Google
are
it.
multiple
They're there.
groupings of wounds right here. Here's one on the, what I'll consider the upper arm, which is above the elbow. Here's another grouping. Here's an interesting, complex grouping at the elbow. These are all at the posterior surface of the arm.
I can't show it.
And there's another grouping down here on the forearm. These multiple groupings are patterns. And they are, in my opinion, were inflicted by the teeth and claws of a dog.
We've discussed previously pattern recognition skills and methodology, and you just mentioned the word pattern here. Can you elaborate on what you mean by pattern with regard to this exhibit?
So there are groupings, and one can see that these wounds are going essentially in the same direction. They are oriented in the same way on the from the almost from the inner close to the inner surface of the arm or the anterior surface towards the posterior surface.
What is
of
the
arm.
significance, if any, of that orientation you just described?
So what that gives me direction, and that tells me that the dog's teeth were over here, over here. The dog is over on this side of the arm, and the teeth started their punctures or their injuries over here, and through either the action of the dog or a combination of the action of the dog and the action of the decedent pulling away, or the victim pulling away, the teeth made these abrasions in this direction. from here down to here.
Message
And
me
then
that.
here, it's very complex because of the bending of the elbow. We don't know the exact configuration of what this elbow was in the arm. Was it fully extended, meaning it's fully stretched out, or was it partially bent? Was it fully bent? We don't know. But
About 2
but in
weeks.
addition to the pulling away movement, there's also the bending movement. So that one is even a little bit more complex. And of course, there are some additional marks down here and some possible
Bless you.
bruising down here, punctate marks down here, which may represent the lower teeth.
If we could just stop at that area.
I just want to point out to you guys the time at the bottom is 11:39 of this picture. Ever wonder why they waited that long to take a picture of this weight?
Have you observed in your experience what you call that complex area pattern?
'Cause they're
Have you
showing the
seen
arm.
that before?
Not that exact pattern, no.
But have you seen any that is similar to it?
I've seen some characteristics of these patterns before,
Right.
yes.
And
My
it
YouTube.
is the appropriate methodology to zero in on one section, or is the appropriate pattern methodology to look at all the wounds and then reach a conclusion?
The second, to look at all the wounds.
And could
So-
you please describe?
Why don't we take our recess,
Okay, Your Honor.
okay?
Thank you.
That was totally out of left field. They're in the middle of answering a question and asking a question, and you're going to cut them off and say, we're going to take our recess?
She did that on purpose, in my opinion.
This is insane. No, they just decided to take, but we will fast forward, yes. I'm not sure everything that's going on in the chat, but please remember to respect each other, guys. When I have to watch for pulling the camera down, that's where all my attention goes. No, she did not like the outcome of that. Thank you. Long break.
Well, it would have been lunch, right?
This is on YouTube. And yes, after the live's over, I do put it up on my YouTube as well. So Michelle's Criminal Musing under the same name. Yeah, I mean, they're in the middle of the question and she's literally says, we're going to take our recess. Like, what the hell? Yeah, how dare she interrupt our second husband? I still cannot believe that this man is 67 years old. Please tell us your secrets, Mr. Alessi. Like, does he have access to the Fountain of Youth that we don't? It'll be back in just a second. It's really, really close. Yes, he is. Not that there's anything wrong with being that age. We're all going to be that age someday if we live that long. But that man, let me show you this man that is 67 and looks like this at 67. Thank you. But even his skin. You guys know that I'm a very frequent fighter in the war against wrinkles for myself. But damn. I just don't get it. He clearly takes very freaking good care of himself. Very good care of himself. There, come back just a minute. If I try to fast forward, it's gonna make it overlap, so I'm just gonna give it a minute. It's not fair. Not one bit. But I'll tell you what, I might need to start wearing my frownies during my lives because I cannot control my expressions. Everything shows on my face. And my wrinkles are getting worse from this trial alone, not to mention all the other ones, but this one specifically. Like, you guys have seen me do videos with my frownies on. I'm going to need to start wearing them for life because I cannot help myself. I've always used my expressions. I don't know how to not use them. Oh. Sorry, I got to sit back. My back hurts. You guys wanted to see a picture of Colin's fingers, right? I can only show it quickly. That's pretty hard to see it. Sorry. Let's go on that picture for just a second because I got to get my other picture that's further up. Okay. There's also a picture of him with the teardrop eye, the tattoo right here, and he's wearing a prison outfit the same year that John died. Yeah, I know. When he's wearing all orange, it's a jumper. And I believe it was the year before that, his brother or his cousin, I can't remember which, had also worn that outfit. Yeah.
And
Wait, hold on.
we left off at lunch, and is it that
I'm just gonna leave this down because we can't see the thing that they're about to show. Who am I speaking of? Colin, the McAlberts. Yeah, we were very rudely interrupted while we were in the middle of speaking and asking questions to this nice lady, this amazing woman, and they just cut us off and sent us to lunch. I cannot believe that. They wouldn't do that to Hank.
All right, Mr. Leslie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your
Your
Honor.
second husband, the stage
Good
is yours.
afternoon and welcome back, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon.
Your Honor, if we could please publish Exhibit 1 in evidence.
Okay.
Mr. Wolk?
I still don't get how they didn't take a picture of his arm until 11:39.
Dr. Russell, do you recognize Exhibit 1 from your review of the documents in this case?
Yes,
And what is it that Exhibit 1 represents?
it's a picture of the forearm of the decedent.
And we left off at lunch, and I'm not going to cover too much old ground, just to reorient ourselves back to where
And
we
the
were.
jury.
You were discussing the basis of your opinion.
Sorry, Luna, I cannot show you guys this picture. It's against TikTok policy, but if you want to Google it, they're all over Google.
And conclusion that you said that these wounds were caused by, why don't you restate, well, let's continue on in the basis of your opinion. Let's just continue on. Can you go through what is in Exhibit 1 and describe how it is that you came to your opinion?
Well, I observed multiple
No problem.
patterns of striations or linear abrasions.
I'm sorry to interrupt you so soon. Do you have the pointer in case you want to use that available?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This woman's my favorite. She is getting a sticker.
So there's multiple groupings of linear abrasions, and linear means like a line, linear.
Thank you,
So there's
Jess.
multiple of those, and here's one.
She legit
Here's
is.
another one closer to the elbow. Here's another one closer to the wrist, and here's another array of linear abrasions.
We'll have a
near the
sticker for her
elbow.
for tomorrow, promise.
In terms of these wounds, in assessing their source, do you look at them individually, collectively, or both?
Both. I look at them individually,
Ooh.
and then I put them in context of how they relate to one
Thank you,
another.
Monica.
And how they relate to
That's
one
so
another, is there a name of that methodology that you use in terms of how they relate to each other?
Well, I think it's a pattern methodology, pattern recognition.
And what
Exactly.
pattern is it that you see here
The TikTok
with
shop is
regard
great,
to
yes.
all of these
We
wounds
love
on
TikTok
the
shop.
right arm?
Well, I see multiple linear
Thank you. Seriously, that was so pretty.
Groupings together in a, area from the mid-arm to the mid-forearm.
Is my
Is
sticker in the
there
way?
any
This one?
analysis of direction that is involved in your analysis?
No.
Yes.
What is it?
I believe that these wounds were initiated closer to the anterior surface or the front of the forearm.
I'm sorry, Dr. Russell, to interrupt you, but there's a fan back here which I can hear, but if you could just keep your voice up, that would be great for me.
Yes, I
love
believe
this
they all started closer to the anterior or front portion of the arm. Like they started up here, up here, and the direction is towards the posterior portion of the arm.
Now, if we could just go back briefly, I want you to do a comparison. If we could go back, Your Honor, please, back to Exhibit 157 that we had up earlier.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 167.
Okay, you guys can't see this, so you're not going to really understand what I'm saying necessarily, but I still have to say it for the record. Those two pictures are totally different. Totally different, in my opinion.
As between 167 and 1, which one is closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located?
The previous one.
All right, so let's go back to the previous one. So that one is closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located on January 29 of 2022, correct?
No.
Yes.
And so January 29, 2022, if we can go back to Exhibit 157, or 67, excuse me, 167, can you tell when this picture was taken from the depiction?
Well, it says January 31st.
Okay, so is that the basis for you saying that the Exhibit 1 was closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located?
Yes.
All right, so I wanted to...
For anybody that says that those bites occurred after his heart had stopped, no.
Do another comparison, have you do another comparison of the two. If you can look at what is depicted in Exhibit 167, and now go back to 1 and see if you see any differences at all as to what's depicted. Do you see any differences with regard to
Thank you for the
the
follow.
wounds on the arm, or the arm just in general? Let's go back to, see that now, let's go back to 167.
It doesn't even look like the same person.
Well, the coloration of the photograph is slightly different.
And what do you mean the coloration?
Well, the skin tones here are more yellow than they are in the previous photograph.
And what,
And-
I'm sorry, what is, do you have a conclusion as to why there is a difference in skin tone in this exhibit compared to Exhibit 1?
Well, it could just be technique, lighting technique. I do see some lividity on the chest, postmortem lividity, and that's what that means is pooling of the blood, which happens after death.
Can you explain to the jury what lividity is?
Yes, so blood follows the laws of gravity, and the blood will settle to the dependent parts of the body. In this case, the body, the body of Mr. O'Keefe is horizontal, and so the blood is going to settle from the top of the chest, which would probably be up here somewhere, down towards the back, which would be the inferior portion of the chest in that position.
Kevin.
And likewise, it would happen on the extremities too.
So you just mentioned the extremities. Do you see any lividity on the extremity here, the right arm?
You know, actually, there is discoloration over here in the elbow area. I do see some okay. So there's several areas of lividity on the arm. I'm sorry. There's some right here. This redness right here on the near the wrist. I believe that that's postmortem lividity. I believe that this redness in here near the elbow is also postmortem lividity. And yeah, that's what I believe.
Okay.
That's postmortem lividity.
And again, lividity is that, you
I don't
said
think
something
so.
that sets in after time, after death?
Yes, it's the pooling of blood.
Is there, with regard to this depiction, do you see any bruising with regard to that elbow?
I do too.
You know, I think that initially, earlier this morning, with the lighting, I may have said that this was bruising, but now as I think about it, and I see all this other lividity here, lividity over here, I believe that's postmortem lividity.
And if we could go back to Exhibit 1,
Hank is going to tear her apart for changing her statement, even though she just now made the realization. He'll still use that. He will latch onto that like, I'm not going to say like a dog, anything else.
and you said this is the one that's closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located. Do you see any lividity or bruising with regard to that photo?
I don't see any definite bruising. I do see some discoloration up here near the shoulder. I'm not sure if that's postmortem lividity or not. It could be early postmortem lividity.
So if we could, thank you, Mr. Woe, can we take that depiction down for the moment?
Thank you. My arm is tired.
What I'd like to do is and we'll come back to that. If we could have the lights back on, please.
That is true.
Thank
she
you.
Did. Babe, everything okay? Just asking.
Have you had experience prior to this case in
Thank you for the follow.
performing your pattern recognition methodology skills with regard to dog-inflicted wounds on humans? In other words, have you seen dog-inflicted wounds that have a pattern on humans?
I've seen dog wounds that have had a pattern. I didn't need to do it, utilize that skill because I also had other information about the case. You know, for instance, police officer or the victim himself said, you know, I was attacked by a dog.
Right. And for those that can you give an example, like in the ER, just as to how you would come to have that knowledge or otherwise? How would you generally come to have the knowledge as to a potential source of the wound?
Oftentimes it's the victim that tells me, or in the case of the law enforcement dog bites, I had both victim and police officers tell me that the police dog, inflicted these wounds.
And so and how many times generally in your career, we discussed it this morning, how many times generally did someone present with dog-inflicted wounds and you were told that these wounds were from a dog? Roughly how many in your career?
Well, all of the law enforcement dog bites, so that would be 40 to 60 or so of those, plus most of the non-law enforcement dog bites, the patients or the mother have said this, a dog bit me or a dog bit my son.
And for those where someone said something, the dog bit my son, were the wounds that you saw similar to or different from the wounds that are depicted in Exhibit 1 that we've had up on the screen?
On the civilian dog bites, there's some similarities, but not as many
Thank you.
striations on the civilian dog bites.
And are the more striations on what's depicted in Exhibit 1, does that lead you to more easily conclude it's from a dog bite, or is it harder for you to conclude it's from a dog bite?
Neither.
Right. So is your prior experience as an emergency room physician, as a physician in Cochrane, does that experience allow you to exercise pattern recognition skills with regard to Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 157?
Sustained.
Do you use your pattern recognition, did you use your pattern recognition skills in evaluating Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 157?
Yes.
In terms of characteristics of dog bites, if we can go back to Exhibit 1, please. Is Exhibit 1 highly characteristic of a dog bite or lowly characteristic of a dog bite?
Sustained.
How would you describe the characteristics of what appears on Exhibit 1?
Well, what I see on Exhibit 1 is multiple strikes from a dog.
I'm going to allow it.
Can you please repeat your answer?
Yes,
What you see?
multiple strikes from a dog.
And with regard to, do you see any characteristics in terms of a medical observation with regard to those strikes?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. Are you familiar with the medical term pathognomonic?
Oh, yes.
What is the definition of pathognomonic?
Pathognomonic in medicine means that the characteristics of a condition are so highly specific and unique that they basically say that it can only be from a certain condition and no other condition. So to the exclusion of all other conditions. That's what is meant by pathognomonic. At least that's my understanding.
Do you consider the
To make it abundantly clear, I don't know one way or another whether or not that Chloe was, according now, a police dog or not. So I'm totally open. You guys think she was and she wasn't. I don't know. I don't live there. I don't know them. I don't know. I just don't know.
these wounds pathognomonic?
Sustained.
How do you evaluate these wounds in terms of what you call the
Let's do something here. Can we all agree to disagree on this? Guys, we can look it up on our own time. We don't have to. We've already been through this quite a few times, so let's just agree to disagree, okay?
characteristics?
I would characterize them as highly specific for a dog attack.
I'm going to strike the last word, Mr. Wilson.
In terms of the characteristics that you have talked about, are there any other aspects of dog dentition that you can discern from Exhibit 1?
Guys, please, let's move on from that, okay? Yes, Bev,
I
struck
don't
the word
understand the
attack.
question.
You mentioned earlier when we had the dog dentition exhibit up, you mentioned an arch. Is there any aspect of Exhibit 1 that concerns an arch?
Yes, there is, in my opinion, an arch-like structure right here towards the lower part of the forearm, towards the wrist, suggesting that this here is made from the very front teeth of the dog. Now, when one looks at these injuries or wounds, one has to remember that, number one, this is not a mannequin. This is a person whose skin is somewhat elastic, whose skin will slide over the underlying bones, and so therefore some of the wounds may have been created by the exact same teeth, for instance, but look differently, depending on the part of the anatomy, the elasticity of the skin, also depending on things like if there was clothing or something in between the teeth and the skin. So one has to consider and also there may be motion motion effects. The living victim could have been pulling away from the dog. The dog could have been, pulling or jumping and only catching a glimpse, a little slight bit of the skin with his teeth. So there's a lot of movement and things that one has to consider when an injury is inflicted on a body.
Objection, move to strike.
I'm going to strike that.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
Yes, please do approach. Put them in their place. The hell? I know. And this is actually a real trial, not a movie. This is actually happening. That's what I don't. About 2 weeks, approximately. I bet you Karen is too.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. If we could put the Exhibit 1 back up on the screen, please, Mr. Wolf. Dr. Russell, is what's depicted on the screen
Me too.
one dog bite or more than one dog bite?
Objection.
Ask it differently, Mr. Wilson.
Dr. Russell, can you determine from this depiction, but how do you evaluate this depiction with regard to dog bites?
Well, I see several groupings of wounds. Here's one grouping up near the shoulder. Here's another distinct grouping near the elbow, but above the elbow. Here is a third grouping around the back of the elbow and the upper forearm. Here's some additional marks. I think they're separate, but I don't know exactly if they are separate dog bites or scratches. And then there's another grouping around the posterior forearm near the wrist. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 4 different types of either bites or combination bite and claw marks.
You mentioned claw marks. Is there any evidence of claw marks in this exhibit?
It's hard to say exactly what what these marks are. This one here, and even to a certain extent, This one here, it has some characteristics of both claw marks and bites. So
Even though you may not be able to determine whether it's a claw mark, can you determine, or the specific type of mark, can you determine that those are from a dog?
I believe they are, yes.
So now let's go. You mentioned we'll switch. We can leave that up for just a moment because we're going to come right back to it. And Dr. Russell, earlier on, you used the phrase incomplete dental impression. Do you recall that?
Something like that, yes.
What phrase would you like to use? Because you were describing whether a dog or not had a complete bite. What phrase would you like to use?
That's okay. Incomplete bite, I
Okay. Do
might
you
consider.
see any evidence of an incomplete bite on Exhibit 1?
I believe all of the bites here are incomplete.
Why do you come to that conclusion?
Because in my opinion, they don't penetrate the skin, which I would consider more of a bite or more of a complete bite. So they're just scratches on the surface of the skin.
When you say they don't penetrate the skin, we see the marks that are on there. What do you mean that they don't penetrate the skin?
They don't penetrate the full thickness of the skin and extend into the soft tissue underneath.
And what, in terms of incompleteness that you just described, have you observed incomplete dog bites in your career?
Many.
Yes.
Roughly how many incomplete dog bites have
Thank
you
you.
observed and treated in your career?
Over 100.
In our incomplete bites, the majority of bites from civilian dogs, or are they a minority of the bites from civilian dogs?
I believe they're the majority of the bites of civilian dogs.
Did you determine whether these wounds occurred at the same time?
I believe they did.
Why do you come to the conclusion that they occurred at the same time?
Because of the wound characteristics, the coloration of the wounds, the tissue reaction to the wounds. So they all, in timing, are at the same time, around the same time.
Did you determine whether these wounds were sustained by Mr. O'Keefe before or after he died?
Before he died.
How do you reach the conclusion that these wounds were suffered by Mr. O'Keefe
Thank you.
before he died?
Because they have what we call a vital reaction. So there is an ever so slight vital reaction or inflammation around the edges of the wounds. And so that determines that, that supports the fact that they were inflicted during life.
Dr. Russell, did you observe
Me
Mr.
too.
O'Keefe's right arm personally?
No,
Thank you, Gunther.
Is it generally accepted in the practice of medicine, particularly emergency or pathology, to observe and determine the source of a wound from a photograph after death?
it is generally accepted.
And have you, in your career, used photographs to determine wounds and patterns of wounds?
Yes,
And is that an accepted practice?
yes,
And it is a generally accepted practice?
yes.
Now, in conducting we're going to switch a little bit now to what you call the differential diagnosis. In conducting your differential diagnosis with regard to motor vehicle accidents, describe for the jury how you performed that differential diagnosis with regard to the decedent. And we can leave that up for just a moment. Go ahead, Dr. Russell.
Objection.
So I'm gonna need to see your sorry folks.
Another sidebar. Well, it was Hank that objected. He just did it very, very low. Couldn't really hear that much. Hank's getting ready for his turn. He's warming up. I had to get my cashews out.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
With Your Honor's permission to republish Exhibit 1. Thank you for your patience, Dr. Russell. Is what the wounds you see on Exhibit 1 consistent or inconsistent with what you have seen from your experience with regard to motor vehicle accident victims?
Inconsistent.
Thank you.
If I could have published Exhibit 206, which is in evidence, Your Honor.
It may be a duh for us, but not for all the other people.
Do you recognize Exhibit 206?
Yes,
Did you review that as part of any report in this case?
yes,
And can you describe how you reviewed this document as part of your evaluation of this case?
well, I reviewed the injuries, which are, so this is a decedent, a picture of a decedent. A different case, not the decedent in this case, totally separate case.
And is this from Dr. Welcher's report that you reviewed?
Yes,
All right, so continue, please.
and so this is a person deceased, looks like in the street, and he's got multiple injuries, and this is allegedly from an auto versus pedestrian accident.
So if we could, are you able to discern any injuries to any limbs from this? If you could zoom in on the limbs, Ms. Rope, thank you.
So there is a very extensive degloving, partially degloving, avulsion injury to the forearm of this individual, the extensive skin loss, damage to the subcutaneous tissue, possibly damage to other tissues beneath that.
And Mr. Wolk, if you could zoom back out and go to the list that is highlighted in the original of this. And
Thank
Dr.
you.
Russell, can you tell me whether you evaluated the list, and if so, how did you evaluate that list in connection with the photo?
Well, the photo is limited only really to the upper chest and the right arm. And so I can't comment on any of the CAT scan findings here on the on this list, but this was a list of numerous traumatic injuries to this person. And regarding the arm, it says right upper extremity wound with vascular injury, clinical.
What does that mean, if anything, to you?
I think this is the best witness to date. But if you missed it, don't worry. I'll be putting it up on my YouTube after we're done. She says it's dog bites, so.
Well, that suggests it's a soft tissue wound. However, what they're saying is clinical, so they're not commenting on if there were any x-ray findings, for instance. On an x-ray, but I mean would be a post-mortem x-ray. And this is just a clinical diagnosis or a visual hands-on diagnosis.
Do you know whether that line that you just read relates to any part of the photograph? Any part of the photograph?
Well, I believe it relates to that injury that we pointed out in the previous photograph.
Can you switch back to that, please, Mr. Wolf? And if you could just zoom in and just what does
So this is the wound that they are talking about. It's a large gaping wound,
No, I can't.
soft tissue wound.
If we could go back to the list, please. Zoom in, thank you.
But
Please continue.
Sorry.
what I was going to say is that there are multiple other injuries in this person. Multiple serious, significant injuries, subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, intraventricular hemorrhage, liver laceration, hemopneumothorax, that's blood and air in the chest cavity outside of the lungs. So it's in an area where it shouldn't be. This person had numerous injuries.
Are you able to compare these injuries and that photo in this Exhibit 206? And did you compare them
The same name as above, Michelle's criminal musings.
to your review of the autopsy report and other medical records of Mr. O'Keefe?
Sustained.
Sit down, Hank.
Answer the question?
You can take that down. From your review, did Mr. O'Keefe
you.
sustain any liver laceration?
No,
Did Mr. O'Keefe sustain any gaping, as you called it, lacerations to the right forearm?
no,
Did Mr. O'Keefe sustain any pneumothorax injuries that you were describing with regard to 206?
no hemopneumothorax.
Let's switch to another topic. Let's talk about clothing of the decedent. In forming your opinion, did you consider Mr. O'Keefe's clothing in relation to his wounds?
Yes,
If we could, Your Honor, have Exhibit 150 in evidence published
Okay.
to his wounds.
yes,
If we could, Your Honor, have Exhibit 150 in evidence published.
Okay.
Thank you for the follows.
Do you
guys.
recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 150?
yes.
And what is it?
It's a picture of part of the hoodie, sweatshirt or shirt that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing at the time,
And wearing when?
at the time of his death.
And did you evaluate this photo as part of your review of the autopsy report?
Yes,
And we're going to come back to this. If we could please switch to, Your Honor, 147C in evidence.
Okay.
Thank you. And what is 147C?
so this is a close-up of the sleeve of that shirt that we just saw on the previous image. And there's a hole or defect here in the sleeve, which I'm circling with the pointer. And there's a label that labels it number 1. And so I see this hole that is rather round and appears to have some fabric coming out of the hole towards the exterior of the jacket or the shirt.
Did you attribute any significance to the shape of the wound? And if so, what significance?
The shape of the hole, yes. So it's rounded. I actually attributed a lot of significance to that.
also
Describe
one
the
right
a lot
next
of
to it.
significance that you attributed to this hole.
Well, I believe that this hole was made by a canine tooth. And with the tooth going into the shirt, reaching the skin, and then coming out of the shirt, pulling out some fabric with it.
And we'll come back to this, if we could, Mr. Wolk, go to 147D as in David that's in evidence. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes.
What is it?
A round hole in the shirt, again with some fabric fibers pointing towards the outside of the shirt.
Is this the same hole that we just saw on 147C or a different hole?
Can we go back? I don't know.
Okay, so let's now go back to Exhibit 150. What significance, if any, do you give to the various triangles that are on the hoodie? Could you describe to the jury what those are and what's their purpose?
So the triangles are labels that were placed by either the police or the crime lab or someone, and the point of the triangle generally is pointing towards a hole in the shirt. As you can see, there are multiple ones here, and I want to make sure that you don't confuse it with this rather large defect, which is caused by something else.
So let's start with each
That
one
looks like
and
it
we'll
was
go
cut
through
off.
these quickly. Let's start and zoom in on number 1. What did you conclude about the source of that hole in the hoodie?
Sustained.
Did you evaluate what is depicted as number 1 in that slide as part of your review?
Yes.
And what was your evaluation?
Sustained.
Let's go back and zoom out.
Thanks,
Have
Pizarro.
you, in your career, examined clothing either as part of your forensic pathology practice or your emergency medicine practice to determine the source of defects in clothing?
Yes.
How many times have you done that approximately in your career?
Several hundred.
And have you, in those several hundred times, have you ever had to reach a conclusion as to whether there was any connection between defects in clothing and wounds to humans?
Many times.
Can you give some examples of the many times you've had to look at clothing and defects in clothing to assist you in determining wound recognition in a human?
Yes, so let me clarify. It's mostly used in forensic pathology, not so much in emergency medicine. The clothing and the cause of the wound is as important as in emergency medicine as the treatment of the wound. But in forensic pathology, it's a key component to any examination where you think that it was an unnatural death. So, so I've done it in gunshot wounds, in stab wounds, multiple times. Looking at the defects, looking at the direction of the, of what I think the bullet, the bullet track was, determining entry and exit wounds. In stab wounds, I've utilized them to help determine offensive and defensive wounds or injuries. So yes, many times.
Have you ever performed that analysis? You mentioned, testified earlier, 500 to 1,000 evaluations of dog-inflicted wounds on humans. Have you ever performed the analysis of defects in clothing and compared them to wounds on humans in the context of dog-inflicted wounds on humans?
I don't think so. Perhaps.
Well, yes. So in terms of, have there
mic
been
just
any
went out.
instances of doing that
About 2
in
weeks.
your
Melissa.
career? Have you done that at all in your career?
Maybe that one child case.
All right. So let's go now to you were discussing the defects in the arm as well as the wounds in the arm and then the defects in the clothing. In terms of back to Exhibit 1. In terms of that pattern that is in the arm,
I just want to say, you said aliens from space. I volunteer as tribute. Take me with you, if that's the case.
and in terms, let's go back to the hoodie. I'll strike that. Have you, in your career, in the terms of evaluating motor vehicle accidents, have you evaluated the clothing of victims of motor vehicle accidents?
Yes.
How many times roughly have you evaluated what clothing looks like in terms of motor vehicle accidents?
Well, in many cases, I had to cut off the clothing in the emergency department, so I observed the clothing then. And then in the post-mortem cases, I evaluated the clothing, but oftentimes sometimes it wasn't helpful.
Have you ever evaluated clothing in determining whether or not the defects in the clothing are consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle accident? Have you ever evaluated that as a forensic pathologist?
Not specifically.
Right. And in terms,
Let's just all be honest. When aliens fly past Earth, they tell the other aliens to lock the damn doors. Just so we're clear. We know this, right?
of your observations in either emergency medicine or forensic pathology, have you ever observed defects from motor vehicle accidents in clothing?
Yes.
Is what is depicted in this exhibit consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle accident?
Okay. Sustain.
Why would you sustain that, Hank and Bev? Why would you object? And why would you? That's your theory, is it not?
In determining, let's go back to Exhibit 1, please.
I know.
In determining and reaching your opinion with regard to the source of these wounds, is it necessary for you to reach that opinion to see a specific dog to determine whether the wounds are from a dog in general?
No.
And in your experience that you talked about earlier today, the 500 to 1,000, was it ever necessary in that experience to go locate the dog, to see the dog, to treat or evaluate the patient?
No.
I don't believe it's her opinion that they're objecting to. I believe it's the question and what she's going to say.
Why is it, well, in terms of, we're going to move to another category, studies. Did you review any studies informing your opinions in this case?
Can we put the lights on and take this?
Yeah.
Can we check on her? On our favorite witness? Because she looks a little bit tired. I think they should check on her.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes.
Yes, many.
She keeps doing like deep breathings.
And
That
did
makes
those studies that you review support or not support your conclusions in this case?
Sustain.
I was going to say that too. She's getting
Which
red.
studies did you rely upon?
Well, I reviewed quite a few, 10 to 20 in depth, and I relied a lot
you.
on 2 of the articles.
Do you recall the names of the lead authors in the studies that you said, that you just referenced?
Yes, one of them was Demuniak,
Could you spell that, please?
I wish. DEMUNNYCK, I believe.
And was there?
And then there was another one, Pollack, POLLACK.
I'm genuinely starting to get worried about her.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, my recollection is correct. We've already pre-marked as exhibits for identification these studies, 2 studies. I may be incorrect in that. If so, I have
Yeah, I
studies.
know,
I will
but-
show them to Mr. Yes, thank you. So we could just make sure I have all the pages.
Maybe we are. Maybe. I noticed she looked like she was having pain when she first got on the stand, and it was her right side.
Do you have these laid out?
Okay. If I can just have a moment. Okay, I've got it.
Worn out, yeah. I agree.
If I could have marked for identification
Me too.
as one document, please.
Exhibit PPP for ID.
I disagree, Millie. Yeah, that's what I was pointing out, Karen. Was the way she was taking
Exhibit
big
PPP
exhales,
For ID.
slow big exhales.
Unless you need important orders down.
Yes, Your Honor.
Which is moved.
Exhibit PPP is the Demunic, and exhibit QQQ is Pollock, and those are the lead alternates. You're welcome.
I've noticed it from the beginning too, but I've just noticed that it's increased with the amount of time she's been doing it. That's why I said something.
Okay, leave them with the witness, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Russell, I have provided you with those 2 exhibits. I would ask you to just briefly take a look at them and let me know whether you recognize those as the articles that you were referencing before.
Yes.
Now let's start out with the Demunic study. Is that exhibit PPP?
PP.
Right. So is this the study that you referenced earlier in your testimony?
Yes.
Can you briefly describe for the jury how that study related to the opinions in this case? Okay.
Sustained.
Are these the studies that you cite to as a basis for support for your opinions in this case?
Yes.
And is QQQ a study that also supports your opinion in this case?
Yes.
Now, in terms of
And guys,
your,
by no way am I trying to insinuate anything other than I'm worried about her. That's all. I wasn't saying it to be like a certain kind of way. I honestly, it was just a thought and I shared it. That's all.
conclusions with regard to,
She's done amazing.
if we can go back once more to exhibit number 1. With regard to your opinion on the cause of these injuries, can you once again state your opinion as to the cause of these injuries?
I believe these injuries were caused by a dog attack.
That part, Sam.
So I'm going to strike that word.
Yeah, so Dr. Russell, if you
Come on,
could,
Bev.
with regard to bite parlance, can you state what your opinion is with regard to bite? So do you have an opinion as to what caused these injuries?
Yes, I believe that these injuries are the result of dog bites and or claw marks.
And do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
There you have it.
That is all the questions I have for this witness at this.
Yeah, it's the word attack that he keeps objecting to.
Okay.
Now try to mess with our girl. Don't do it. We love this woman. Don't you do it. From this woman, yes. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. You should look nervous, Hank, because I know you're about to be I almost said a bad word again. We know. Just don't. Thank you for the follow.
Good afternoon, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Thank
Brennan.
you.
Dr. Russell, we've met before.
Yes,
I've asked you questions before,
yes,
and you've testified before where I've had a chance to ask you about some of your statements and opinions, haven't I?
yes,
Before this case, had you ever testified as an expert in dog bites in any federal court in the United States?
no,
Before this case, had you ever testified
Return.
in any state court in anywhere in the country as an expert in dog bites?
no,
Other than this case, have you ever testified in a courtroom as an expert about dog bites?
no,
Last year, you learned that there was litigation regarding this case, Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, correct?
yes,
You learned a little bit of information about it, and it piqued your interest, didn't it?
yes,
Did you know that the case was receiving a lot of attention?
no.
Did you know that it was on television?
I had no idea until I got here.
You
Aw,
spoke to
my
a
dear.
colleague in Los Angeles, correct?
I'm sorry, I spoke to who?
A colleague?
I spoke to a district attorney in Los Angeles.
And did you just bring up the subject, or did that person bring it up to you?
I brought it up.
Millie, I'm not sure what you mean, hon.
When you brought that up, is it because you knew of the relationship between that district attorney and somebody on the defense team?
Yes,
You wanted to get involved in this high-profile case, didn't you?
no,
Well, you weren't called by anybody on the defense and retained as an expert in the traditional sense, were you?
that's correct.
It was after you reached out yourself and interjected yourself into this case, true?
I did so for a reason. And the reason being that I knew I was one of the only people in the United States board certified and residency trained in emergency medicine and also residency trained in forensic pathology. And therefore I had a unique skill or knowledge set. And I was one of the very few people that had the knowledge of dog bites, as well as those other trainings.
And because of the fact that you held this opinion about yourself, you wanted to get involved in this very high-profile case, didn't you?
I thought I could help clarify the issues as to whether or not this could be a dog bite, and maybe they could move on to something else if it wasn't.
Did you want to get involved?
No, not really.
Inevitably, you got hired by the defense, didn't you?
Yes, I reluctantly agreed.
And they paid for your time?
They are paying for the time.
Yes. Did you know that there was a relationship between the district attorney you spoke to in California and somebody on this defense table?
I know, yes,
So when you spoke to the district attorney, did you have the hope that they would reach out on your behalf to get you involved in this case?
You said it, Tammy. You saved me from saying it. Thank you.
As I said, I hope that they could reach out to the team and I could help
I agree,
clarify
yes.
issues so that they could move on. If it wasn't, if these weren't dog bites, then no sense spending a whole bunch of time on it.
After you testified in this case last year, you then began to advertise yourself as a dog bite expert, didn't you?
I had advertised myself many years ago as a dog bite expert, I think. I'm not sure, but yes, I did advertise myself as a emergency medicine and forensic pathology expert
Did you take
with other, sub interests.
Sure. Did you take a photograph of you testifying at
Hey,
trial
Nico.
and put it on a website to promote your accomplishments?
It's a listing service for physicians, and yes, there is a photograph.
So you took a photograph from your participation in this event,
Yes, that's there.
and you used that photograph in your participation in this event to try to
Right.
procure future work, didn't you?
I wouldn't say that was the reason, no.
When you listed a number of things that you have experience in after this case, you then added that you were an expert in dog bites, didn't you?
I believe I am an expert in dog bites, yes.
But after this case, and after you took the photograph from this case, and after you created this advertising, you then added the fact that you were an expert in dog bites, didn't you?
It was all at the same time, and it was submitted at the same time.
Right. After this case, after you participated and
Well-
volunteered to involve yourself in this case, you then used it as a marketing opportunity, didn't you?
Well, I had retired from my full-time job, and I had time, and I wanted to get more involved in some forensic legal cases, and not specifically dog bite cases. I have much more experience with other cases.
Undoubtedly,
more.
I respect that, but
Do you, though?
simply, after you testified in this case, you did use your participation as a way to try to garner future interest in cases and income, didn't you?
I did, but I did not mention this case.
Have you testified
Do you mean the way you paid $400,000 to Aperture? Because it sounds like you're projecting.
in any other court since this case as a dog bite expert?
No,
You had written a few articles that were peer reviewed on dog bites
It's all
back in, is it the 1990s?
yes,
And they involved law enforcement canines?
yes,
And you describe in those articles how a law enforcement canine grabs and holds, is that the technique they call it?
yes,
Where they lock their jaw and then they pull and hold on to the subject that they're attacking or holding?
yes, that's what they were trained to do back then.
And you would agree that there's a difference between, generally, the way a domestic dog bites
I
and a
know
law
that.
enforcement dog bites?
Generally, yes.
Since those
What's
two
the
articles in
matter?
1990, have you authored
Come here, baby.
anything else regarding dog bites?
No,
You had mentioned that you had gone to seminars regarding identification. Now, I had a chance to ask you a number of months ago about some details about training and education you have on pattern recognition analysis as it specifically relates to dog bites. Remember I asked you those questions a number of months ago?
I believe you did.
And I'd asked you if you could give us any specific listed trainings that you had regarding pattern recognition analysis of dog bites. And at that time, you did not have any names of any classes or seminars or certificates that you have. You mentioned again today that you have attended seminars regarding dog identification analysis. Do you now know some of those trainings and seminars? And are any of those listed on your CV?
The trainings that I went
We don't
to
know them.
on bite marks in general, they were bite marks in general and included things like how to determine what was a human bite, how to differentiate a human bite from a dog bite. But no, I did not specifically attend seminars limited to dog bites only. However, actually, there was one this past February that I did attend at the American Academy of Forensic Science.
Love
Over
her.
your many, many decades, you did not attend any seminars on pattern recognition analysis of dog bites, did you?
Of specifically dog bites, no.
I only want to talk about dog bites. I know you're well trained and educated, I respect that, but I want to talk about dog bites. You didn't attain any certificates in pattern recognition analysis of dog bites, did you?
I don't think there are any that exist, any training programs like that.
In fact, forensically, have you ever been presented with a wound and been asked to determine whether or not the source of it was a dog bite, other than right here in this very case? Have you ever been asked to do that in your entire history?
In my clinical career, perhaps once or twice, but not, not that I can give you a specific name.
Well, the couple times, tell us what stands out. When were you asked ever over your entire career to do a forensic evaluation of a wound and identify whether it was a dog bite? When did that happen?
A forensic evaluation? No, never,
Never.
never.
Okay.
It just doesn't come up.
Okay. And so this is the first shot, the first crack you've had at looking at a photograph and trying to make a determination based just on a photograph
First crap.
whether or not the wound is generated from a particular mechanism, and in this case, your opinion, a dog bite.
No, actually, I disagree. I've been taking photographs of dog bites since the 1990s.
And when you took the photographs, you knew they were dog bites.
I did know that there were dog bites,
Have you-
yes. I have a collection.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
That was it.
I have a collection of
So,
dog bites, she
not when
said.
you knew it was a dog bite and you took a photo. I know you have an interest. I'm asking, other than this case, there was never, ever a time in your career where you were presented with a photo and asked to give an opinion whether the mechanism of injury was a dog bite, other than this case.
That's correct.
So this is not a pattern recognition analysis engagement that you have any experience in before this effort.
I've recognized that pattern many times.
I appreciate your opinion, but I want to ask my question.
Sir, she's
You
not
do
stopping
not
you.
have experience over your long, accomplished career in the effort of pattern recognition analysis of dog bite wounds. Isn't that fair to say?
No.
Okay.
You mentioned
She said,
before,
okay.
and you just mentioned again, so I want to ask you some more questions. You believe that you are uniquely qualified to look at a photograph and give an opinion about the source of the injury.
I'm not uniquely qualified. That's done all the time in forensic pathology. Many forensic pathologists do that.
Did you just say you're one of the very few physicians in the United States who has both the forensic and the clinical experience to look at a photograph and make a determination, the mechanism of injury?
No, I said, if I said that, then that was incorrect. I meant dog bites. But your question just now was not specific to dog bites.
Right.
Postmortem photographs are used all the time in forensic pathology for second opinions.
You're right, my apologies. Did you say today and before, have you said that you believe you're one of the only few physicians in the United States who could authoritatively distinguish between causes of wounds when it relates to dog bites?
I did
No,
say
no.
that, and that's because of my unique training. I don't know of another doctor in the whole United States that did 2 residencies, one in emergency medicine and one in forensic pathology, and has a lifelong interest in dog bites.
So Dr. Russell, from your perspective, as far as you know, you were the only person in the entire United States of America who was qualified to look at a photograph and make a determination whether the wound was derived from a dog bite.
No, I am one of I'm the only physician that I know of that can do that. There may be, a few others out there. There may be, but I don't know of any other physicians that can do that.
Do you recognize anybody other than yourself who has this very particular expertise to be able to do this kind of work?
I'm not aware of anyone.
You were a medical examiner, a forensic pathologist.
Yes,
The difference, Hank, is she's saying she's not aware of, not that there doesn't exist another one. She's clearly saying that she doesn't know of one.
And you know there's about, or would you agree there's probably about 900 to 1,000 medical examiners around the country at the same time over a period of time?
I believe that there might be. There's probably. I think there's around 500 or 600 practicing forensic pathologists.
And do you think because they are forensic pathologists, those 500 or 600 people have the unique qualifications as you do to be able to give an opinion about the genesis of a wound?
Wounds in general, perhaps.
Hank, if you feel that strongly about it, you should have called somebody that had the same qualifications, if not her.
Dog bite wounds, I doubt that very many of them have a specific interest in dog bite wounds.
And so you think that of all those forensic pathologists, medical examiners, you think that qualification and experience itself is not enough to qualify somebody to give an opinion on a photograph about the genesis of a wound related to dog bites?
Well,
She took offense to that when he said just by a photograph. You saw the offense on her face, right? You better back the hell up off our Nana.
if a forensic pathologist has autopsied 1 or 2 cases of dog bite wounds versus my experience with over 500 to 1,000 cases of dog bite wounds, I'm not so sure that person would be a very good expert in that kind of a case.
Have you ever heard of a doctor named Dr. La Posada?
I've heard of Dr. La Posada.
No offense, Hank, but when you bring up people's names and, throw them out there as if they're supposed to be something great, you don't have a good track record, sir. Try again.
Have you ever read any reports by Dr. La Posada?
No,
Has anybody ever shared with you any information or opinions of Dr. La Posada?
I believe she has a very good reputation.
Have you ever, well, how do you believe that? Who told you that?
Because I've heard of her name at national organizations. I believe she's given presentations nationally. I've seen her name, over a dozen years or so.
Do you know whether or not she has any participation in this case?
I believe she does.
Well, so you know when
The
you're
hell?
providing
No. When anybody else makes a comment, when they're questioning and it's just a comment, you say they can't do it, Bev. Yes, I talked to my screen. Yes. He just said wrong. No. I
accolades that
object.
she has maybe some involvement in this case? You know that?
I would provide those same accolades if she didn't have involvement in this case.
Do you know that she has involvement in this case?
I believe she does. The attorneys have not shared everything with me
Well,
in terms of who the witnesses are.
somebody must have shared her name. Who shared her name with you?
I'm very familiar with her name outside
What the hell are you trying to imply about her Nana?
this case.
Who shared her name that she may be a participant in this case?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Well, somebody might.
I think I got a file or something, but yeah.
So when you were reviewing this case, did you get materials from any of the attorneys authored by Dr. La Posada?
I don't think I read a report. I was very interested in reading a report by Dr. La Posada. I was very interested, but I didn't see one.
So when you received materials in this case, you didn't read all the materials the defense gave you?
I don't believe they gave me the report.
What report?
Any report that Dr. La Posada might have written.
Do you know whether or not you've received the report or not?
I received something that had her name on it. I don't remember what it was, but I was looking for,
That's because we started out as the virtual jury and then we saw the truth.
a medical examiner's, or a report, or an actual report, and I did not see one.
Dr. Russell, you are meticulous when you look and examine things.
Right.
So you would know what you've received and what you've read and what you haven't. So the fact that you're telling us that you saw something with her name on it, can you give us a little more information and share with us what it is you actually received about this Dr. LaPosada? What did you get from the defense?
I saw something, I think it was the name of a file folder, but I looked for a report and there was no report in it.
Did you ever ask for it?
I didn't ask because I didn't ask. I really wanted to read it, but I didn't, it wasn't given to me, so I didn't ask.
Were you ever told what other people's opinions might be regarding those photographs?
I'm aware that there was a Dr. Sheridan involved in a previous proceeding, and he believed that those were consistent with dog bites.
Did you ever receive any reports from the defense about what other person's opinions would be in this trial about dog bites?
Oh, yes, I received a report authored by a non-physician. Yes.
So when you say non-physician, you're trying to make the point because you think that person.
You see what? You see what she? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Hold on, Uncle.
Is she talking about that guy from that age group or?
Just okay. I rolled it back.
I think I read a report. I was very interested in reading a report by Dr. LaPosada. I was very interested, but I didn't see one.
I did go back.
So when you received materials in this case, you didn't read all the materials the defense gave you?
I don't believe they gave me the report.
What report?
Any report that Dr. LaPosada might have written.
Do you know whether or not you've received the report or not?
I received something that had her name on it. I don't remember what it was, but I was looking for a medical examiner's, or a report, or an actual report, and I did not see one.
Dr. Russell, you are meticulous when you look and examine things.
Right.
So you would know what you've received and what you've read and what you haven't. So the fact that you're telling us that you saw something with her name on it, can you give us a little more information and share with us what it is you actually received about this Dr. LaPosada? What did you get from the defense?
I saw something, I think it was the name of a file folder, but I looked for a report and there was no report in it.
Did you ever ask for it?
I didn't ask because I didn't ask. I really wanted to read it, but I didn't.
Coming up.
It wasn't given to me, so I didn't ask.
Were you ever told what other people's opinions might be regarding those photographs?
I'm aware that there was a Dr. Sheridan involved in a previous proceeding, and he believed that those were consistent with dog bites.
Did you ever receive any reports from the defense about what other person's opinions would be in this trial about dog bites?
Oh, yes, I received a report authored by a non-physician. Yes.
So when you say non-physician, you're trying to make the point because you think that person might be your opponent in this case?
I don't have any opponents.
Okay, so why did you qualify him as a non-physician?
Because I believe that in order to really understand wounds on a human being, one needs to have treated wounds, seen lots of wounds, and I think that the person that is best qualified for that is a physician.
So a medical examiner wouldn't cut it, in your opinion?
Medical examiner is a physician.
So you think a medical examiner has enough experience to come in and give an opinion on dog bites?
Some, but in their case, I would hope that they have had actual clinical experience with autopsying some cases where there were dog bite wounds, because I don't think they'd worked in the emergency room or any other clinical setting where they treated people. So I'd want to see if they had experience with dog bites.
I'm doctor as a disqualification. How about a dog trainer? Would a dog trainer who's not a doctor have the experience in your mind to come in and give an opinion about photographs and the genesis of the wounds?
Thank you guys for getting us over 170,000 likes. It means so much.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm gonna allow it.
Let me roll
How
that back.
about
I
a
messed it up.
non-doctor, as you said, you made a distinction.
I messed it up.
Cases where there were dog bite wounds, because I don't think they'd worked in the emergency room or any other clinical setting where they treated people. So I'd want to see if they had experience with dog bites.
I'm doctor as a disqualification. How about a dog trainer? Would a dog trainer who's not a doctor have the experience in your mind to come in and give an opinion about photographs and the genesis of the wounds? Objection, Your Honor.
I'm gonna allow it.
Are you kidding
A
me?
non-doctor, as you said, you made a distinction.
Uh-huh.
They're simply a dog trainer, maybe even an uncertified dog trainer. Would that person have the qualifications in your mind to be able to look at photographs and determine whether or not the cause of the injury is a dog bite?
There may be a certain small subset of people who have, very much experience with dog bites that could qualify, as suggesting that these are consistent with dog bites. But I don't think that they could definitively. I think that someone could, who dealt with many dog bites in the past on humans, could possibly say that they were consistent with.
Even if they didn't have the clinical experience?
Well, I prefer that to hear that information from a physician, but I wouldn't rule out that only doctors, only a physician, MD, could say that something was a dog bite.
It seems like the standard is now kind of changing a little bit. Because when I asked you, Your Honor,
Sustain.
you mentioned the other person, you disqualified the person because they weren't a doctor. It seems now in some instances, you're willing to accept a non-doctor to a very select group.
Is anybody else having a no sound issue? I saw someone say no sound. I'm gonna press play and imagine that you guys are gonna tell me no. If you're having a problem, try exiting and coming back in.
I can explain. If someone had looked at perhaps hundreds and hundreds of wounds inflicted by a dog that they know was inflicted by a dog, and they saw the resulting photographs on a person, I think that particular person may be able to make some comment as to whether or not some wounds are consistent. However, if in terms of a medical examiner, if they've autopsied one case or two cases of dog bites and they're trying to testify based on some pictures, I would be a little concerned about that.
Does qualification for this type of business, in your mind, depend on who hires you?
Absolutely not.
Suffice to say, you've never
object.
taken a
I object. That is our Nana. Don't come at our Nana like that. You're not one to talk about who pays what whom, sir.
Looked at perhaps hundreds and hundreds of wounds inflicted by a dog that they know was inflicted by a dog,
It's bad.
and they saw the resulting photographs on a person. I think that particular person may be able to make some comment as to whether or not some wounds are consistent. However, if in terms of a medical examiner, if they've autopsied one case or two cases of dog bites and they're trying to testify based on some pictures, I would be a little concerned about that.
Does qualification for this type of business, in your mind, depend on who hires you?
Absolutely not.
Suffice to say, you've never taken a class in the forensic analysis of dog bites.
I don't think any class exists.
But I'm asking about your experience. You,
That's correct.
you have.
How in the hell are you going to say in her experience when she tells you a class doesn't exist, do you want her just to wave her magic wand? The hell?
That's correct. I can't take a course that doesn't exist.
You've never engaged in any type of opinion looking at photographs and then had that opinion peer reviewed by other dog bite experts, have you?
No,
Do you have any experience in veterinarian medicine?
I'm aware of it. That's my experience.
Do you have any accomplishments like degrees?
No,
Now, you've testified a number of times in this case, haven't you?
yes,
And when you testify, you know there's a court reporter and there are transcripts, correct?
yes,
You originally testified when you first came out and volunteered to testify last year, and there was a hearing before trial, wasn't there?
excuse me, say again,
When you
please.
volunteered to come out last year, there was a hearing before you testified at trial, wasn't there?
Yes,
Do you remember that was on June 18, 2022?
sounds right.
And then you then testified at trial on June 21st, 2022.
Yes,
I didn't have the privilege of meeting you on either of those events, did I?
no,
But since then, we have met,
yes,
and we had a chance to speak at a subsequent hearing on December 12, 2024.
yes,
And then after that, we again had an opportunity to discuss this on January 7, 2025.
yes,
When you
Me too.
reviewed the case, when you first reviewed it before you testified last year, you had very limited information, didn't you?
yes,
You had just an autopsy report, photographs from the coroner, photographs from the hospital, an emergency room report.
Yeah, I can roll back a little bit.
Yes?
a dog bite, town of Canton report.
Okay. So when you
Fast forward.
had an opportunity to look at the medical examiner's report, you yourself had been a medical examiner, correct?
Yes,
And there's
Oh,
a
maybe I
unique
did.
advantage of actually conducting a hearing before trial, wasn't there?
excuse me, say again,
When you
please.
volunteered to come out last year, there was a hearing before you testified at trial, wasn't there?
Yes,
Do you remember that was on June 18, 2022?
sounds right.
And then you then testified at trial on June 21st, 2022.
Yes,
I didn't have the privilege of meeting you on either of those events, did I?
no,
But since then, we have met,
yes,
and we had a chance to speak at a subsequent hearing on December 12, 2024.
yes,
And then after that, we again had an opportunity to discuss this
You know what?
on January 7, 2025.
No, an actual hearing to put her in. That's what I thought that at first too, but no, that wasn't what they meant.
yes,
Thank you.
When you reviewed the case, when you first reviewed it before you testified last year, you had very limited information, didn't you?
yes,
You had just an autopsy report, photographs from the coroner, photographs from the hospital, an emergency room report. Yes?
yes, I had more than that.
The medical examiner file had a toxicology report.
Yes, and there was more.
Okay.
I believe there was a dog bite, a town
No,
of
it's
Canton report.
Okay. So when you had an opportunity to look at the medical examiner's report, you yourself had been a medical examiner, correct?
Yes,
And there's a unique advantage of actually conducting an autopsy as opposed to just looking at photographs, isn't there?
yes, there is.
And if you were actually conducting the autopsy, you firsthand can make
See that sticker? Delayed live. I don't know why people come in here like they're gonna try to catch me for playing something later. No, I clearly stated it's delayed.
observations about injuries, make measurements, and see things that don't always appear in photographs.
That's correct.
And when you would do medical exams, you had a distinct advantage over people who would later see your work, a written report, or photographs, because you were there actually conducting the investigation.
Yes,
And it's for that reason that when you testified before, you have acknowledged that you relied on Dr. Scordi-Bello's report for information?
Yes,
Because you didn't have the benefit of doing measurements or looking at depths or anything else firsthand.
yes, correct.
And when you looked at that photograph that you discussed with the jury, you also had a chance to see Dr. Scordi-Bello's report regarding the abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Yes,
She described those abrasions as superficial, didn't she?
yes,
She actually gave measurements, 3 centimeter superficial abrasion on the right medial upper arm. Right?
yes,
You not only read that, you deferred to her ability to have a first-hand observation, and you accepted that as true, didn't you?
yes, but there's no interpretation of that abrasion.
Multiple abrasions from 2 to 3 millimeters and up to 7 centimeters on the posterior right arm and forearm.
Yes,
Did you read that from
I
Dr.
did.
Scordi-Bello?
yes,
Did you accept her finding and observation?
yes,
And you would agree she was in a far superior position than you when she made these observations and notes, correct?
they are not inconsistent with what I said.
But that's not what I asked, though.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't mean to be sharp.
okay.
Who are you asking their weight?
I apologize. Did you rely on her ability and first-hand observation of those wounds?
Yes,
And did you appreciate or accept the fact she had a superior opportunity to evaluate those wounds firsthand that you did not have the benefit of?
she made no interpretation of those ones.
Did you know that Dr. Scordi-Bello had described them as superficial?
They are.
Did you know that she said there was no depth and no puncture?
Okay, got you.
Not inconsistent with what I said.
I understand, doctor, but I'm asking you, do you
I-
know that her position is that there was no puncture and no depth to those wounds?
Objection, Your Honor. Could we have the witness see the report that he keeps referring to?
Thank you,
Can you answer
AJ.
that question without saying it, or do you need to see it?
See it.
Well, I remember it, but there's no inconsistency here. I agree with that.
Would you accept that Dr. Scordi-Bello's opinion is that there was no depth and no puncture to those wounds?
May I see the report?
It might not be in the report, I'm asking about
You're trying to
any
trick her.
testimony, anything that she's ever said. Would you agree or accept her position that there is no puncture or depth to those wounds?
Objection, Your Honor. Like all the questions that were about an autopsy. Yes. Sidebar.
Okay.
Sidebar. Way to stand up for Nana, AJ.
Yeah.
The fact that he started that and then she's like, "Can I see the report?" He's like, "Oh well, it might not actually be in the report." No. I lost count, to be completely honest with you. Thank you.
Had
I know. This isn't even like a real trial. This is more like a movie, and that's what's sad about it. He really is. In the beginning, I was like, oh, he reminds me, he's like a fox type energy, and not in a good way, like sneaky like a fox. But then I was like, no, he's slimy. The fact that he tried to trap her into that, Excuse me.
May I?
Yes, please.
Dr. Russell, I read to you the measurements that were in Dr. Scordi-Bello's report.
I don't
Are
think we'll
you
redirect
aware that
today.
she testified that these superficial abrasions did not have any depth or any puncture?
I don't recall that.
Well, would you agree if Dr. Scordi-Bello testified in this court that those superficial abrasions did not have any puncture or depth. Would you agree with that assessment?
Objection, Your Honor.
In that form, it's sustained.
Would you agree that the superficial abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm had no punctures?
I agree.
Would you agree that the abrasions, the superficial abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm had no depth?
No measurable depth, yes.
Between the last time you testified and then you testified here today, have you spoken to the attorneys at all regarding the issue of punctures?
No,
Because you are agreeing today that those superficial abrasions did not have any punctures, right?
they don't appear to have any punctures.
But you, in the past, have testified very, very differently than that, haven't you?
No,
Now, we've spoken many times. I'm going to go through many of those examples later, but we'll do that a little bit later, Dr. Russell.
A little bit later, like you need all this time with her. You need to sit the hell down. They meant past the skin level. Like into muscle and stuff.
Over the course of your many testimonies under oath, would it be fair to say that you have changed your opinions about the superficial abrasions to John O'Keefe's arm many times?
I don't believe that's fair to say.
In the past, when you were describing Mr. O'Keefe's superficial abrasions on his arm, did you give varying and different opinions about the cause of each individual wound, area of wound?
I don't believe so.
Why?
When you first gave opinions, that was before the last proceeding. You came in and you were questioned before you testified in that initial proceeding, right? I'm trying to be as specific as I can. You testified last year?
Yes,
And
in
Please.
there was a hearing and then there was a proceeding.
Okay. That prior hearing, can we call the first event the prior hearing and the next one the prior proceeding?
I'm confused.
I don't want to confuse you. I'm just trying to follow the rules. You
Are you, though?
testified twice last year, didn't you?
3 times.
3 times. Okay. The first time you testified was just before the judge?
Yes,
Okay. When you first testified before the judge, do you remember that you had uncertainty about how each and every one of those wounds was caused?
I don't remember that.
And do you remember when you then testified a couple days later at the proceeding that some of your opinions changed from the first time you testified?
I don't believe that.
And then when you later met me and we'd had a chance to talk over the last 2 events, December and January, would it be fair to say that your opinions regarding the individual areas of wound changed?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Guys, the difference between it's totally different. When she was talking about puncture, that was with the sweater. That totally different. When she's saying not puncture, she's talking about below skin level.
At some point before or during our conversations in December and January, you wrote a report, didn't you?
Yes,
When you wrote that report, you hadn't written a report before the first time you came in and testified, had you?
that's correct.
And it was between those hearings in December and in January where you wrote your first report.
Sounds correct.
You dated that report December 9th, 2024. Does that ring a bell?
Yes,
When you wrote that report, you did not write that report alone, did you?
I did.
You had some help, didn't you?
Not in the content of the report.
Well, you sent the report back a number of times for review and revisions, didn't you?
In terms of organization,
And some of the language in this report is really not your language. It's the language of somebody who helped you write some of this, isn't it?
You know, if somebody helped me write it, it would have been much better written than that.
Didn't you agree that you had some assistance with the report? Haven't you testified to that before?
And no, and in terms of organization, there was some comments, though, this sentence belongs, you know, with this paragraph or the, you know, whatever. But in terms of content, that was my work.
Well, it was your report, correct?
It's my report.
Me too.
And when you write a report, it's your words, not somebody else's. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
But nevertheless, you had somebody assisting you. True.
In terms of organization, yes.
Who was helping you with the report?
It was somebody from the law office.
Well, it was this gentleman right here, Attorney Alisi, who just asked you questions. He helped you,
No,
didn't he?
actually, it wasn't.
Was it
Sir, are you stating or are you asking? Because I think you're a little bit confused. You left out the question.
from his law firm that somebody helped you?
I believe so, but it was in terms of organization.
Do you remember who was helping you?
You guys seriously reported me? Grow up.
With your report?
I don't remember her name.
Would you agree that after that report was written, many of your opinions changed?
I don't know.
No.
In your report, you provide your background. Yes?
Yes.
And you've been licensed to practice medicine since 1988
Yes.
as a physician?
Yes.
And you've been licensed to practice medicine as a surgeon?
It's called, in California, it's called physician and surgeon license.
Do you have a physician and surgeon's license?
I do.
Okay. Have you ever practiced as a surgeon?
Well, in the emergency department, we do surgery. We have to do some surgery sometimes. We have to open up people's chests and, you know, and compress the heart sometimes when they're have gunshot wounds to the chest.
I'll take this moment to say trigger warning.
I've had to put chest tubes in. I've had to debride dog bite wounds and other wounds. So yes, there is a component of surgery.
If you do stitches, that's considered surgery, isn't it?
Maybe.
Well, medically speaking, stitches is surgery.
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Do you have a surgeon's license?
I have a physician and surgeon's license in California.
Now, when you first looked at this case and testified, do you remember when you were looking at Mr. O'Keefe's superficial wounds, you said that you thought they appeared to be consistent with an animal attack?
I do remember that.
And when you were describing animal attack, you were a lot less specific than you were today, weren't you?
Yes.
You were less sure about your opinion when you first testified about this case than you provided to this jury today.
I was
Good
certain
catch.
that it was a dog attack. However, as I mentioned before to you, in medicine, we're taught never, nothing is 100%, and therefore never say, anything's 100%. So that's why I gave that generalization. However, I have reviewed the case. I personally was certain that was a dog, that those were dog marks. Now, I have reviewed this case over and over and over again. Plus, I've read additional articles more than once, and which substantiate again my findings. So, so my degree of certainty perhaps increased.
So when you first testified in this case, back in June of 2022, are you agreeing that your testimony was less certain than today?
I believed that it was a dog attack at that time.
When you testified, you didn't say dog attack, you said animal attack at the beginning, didn't you?
Yes.
And when you were asked about the
Semantics, Hank. Come on.
cause, you said that it could be bite or scratch wounds.
Correct.
So back in June, when you were looking at individual wounds, you, at that time anyways, were unable to differentiate between bite and scratch wounds.
They are very similar.
I understand, but today, you seem pretty unequivocal, so I want to go back to the beginning and see the evolution.
Objection,
I'm asking a
yes.
question.
Right.
I don't
So
care if
the
you're
argumentative
asking.
part is out. Ask the question, Mr. Blair.
I want to go back to identify the evolution of your opinions. So let's start at the beginning.
So, question, please.
At the beginning, before your opinion evolved, you started with an opinion that this could have been either bite or scratch wounds, right?
Yes.
And if there was actually a methodology where you could identify superficial abrasions and make a determination whether it was from an animal or a dog, there would be something definitive, specific, where you could identify a scratch from a bite wound, wouldn't there be?
Not unless there was a piece of tooth in the wound or a piece of nail. There would otherwise not be any specificity.
You talked about patterns when you first testified back in June of last year.
Mhm.
And when you talked about the patterns, again, you had some uncertainty whether those patterns were caused by nails, claws, or could have been caused by teeth. Isn't that fair to say originally that was your position?
There is some overlap in terms of the appearances. They can appear very similar, and they can be arranged very similar in terms of parallel lines.
In fact, when you first testified, you weren't consistently even saying that it was a dog, or as you say today, dog attack. You were saying, in your opinion, they were the result of animal bites or scratches. That was what you originally opined, isn't it?
We just went through that, yes.
And at some point, you said that it might most likely be a large dog. Do you remember that?
Objection, Your Honor. Can we approach with regard to this line of questioning?
So why don't we break for today? All right, so jurors, we're not going to finish this tonight in 5 minutes, so it seems like it's a good place to break. I do have to give you those same.
She loves Nana so much too that she wants Nana to come back tomorrow. She's just giving them the instructions. So that's it for today, guys. Tomorrow we'll have to start a little bit later because I have a doctor's appointment virtually at 11. I'll be on right after that. Shouldn't take long. So tomorrow, let's aim for 11:30 to 12 Central Time. I cannot believe the audacity that man had to go at our Nana like that. The hell? The jury sees this the way we do, right? I mean, yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I see how money, like, we have 189,000. You guys have no idea how much that means to me. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for being so awesome to each other in the chat. I hope that you guys have an amazing night, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.